I'm talking about David Coe, the CEO of Calm, the leading app for meditation and mindfulness.
David has now written a book about self-care called Recharge, boosting your mental battery one conversation at a time.
I'm David Coe, CEO of Calm, son of Korean immigrants, a proud father, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Recharge. Recharge is where leaders and changemakers share the tools, habits, and mindsets they rely on to stay grounded, energized, and effective. Let's recognize, reflect, and recharge together. I'm excited today to have a conversation with a television and film icon. You may know him from movies such as Apollo 13, A Few Good Men, and my favorite, Footloose. But his work extends far beyond television and film. He's giving back to communities through his foundation, 6degrees.org. So let's recharge with Kevin Bacon. All right, thank you, Kevin, for joining today's conversation. Really appreciate you joining today.
Thank you. Happy to be here, David. Good to see you.
And you even worked on a Calm sleep story, Dreamboat. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if you
did.
remember that.
Oh, sure. Of course I remember it. Yeah. You know, it was interesting because I find myself, especially later in life, often in the studio, recording. I have some commercial contracts, and I've done some books on tape before. I read a short story for a friend of mine one time that was really, fun and interesting, kind of challenging. It's an interesting acting challenge because I haven't really worked too much in the animated space where you are really a voice actor. My work has been always in the kind of narration thing, and the Calm reading the book or the story was very, very different because there was this challenge of not only telling the story but also keeping it in a kind of place in your voice and in your energy that would have the desired effect, which would be to calm people down or let them go off to sleep. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it.
Oh, that's awesome. I got to tell you, you were our largest release 3 years ago when we had you come on, and my kids actually saw me a couple days ago. Just they're 17 and 14, just listening to you again, and they were like, "Please, Dad, don't record one of those for yourself. It's not very calming." But for you, yes, they were like super excited that you were here.
I don't know. I don't know if our if our voices would ever be calming to our children. I mean, maybe sometimes. I mean, I would hope so, but yeah, I that's an interesting that's an interesting idea.
So I actually want to start our conversation talking about your career, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And, it's just so hard to believe that Footloose came out over 40 years ago, and what just a crazy, surreal moment you must have experienced when that first hit. I don't know. Could you just kind of tell me a little bit about it and tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Be careful what you wish for because when started, to become an actor, even I mean, I learned later on to really embrace the art of it and the skill, and I've had a great passion for being good at what it was that I was chosen to do. Um, but initially, I was really drawn to it because I really wanted to be famous, and
Mm,
I think that I can't really understand or actually explain why that was a big drive for me. I'm the youngest of six, so maybe it was just kind of a feeling to try to get attention,
sure.
in a big crowd of people. But you know, but by the time Footloose came out, that desire for fame had really lessened, and what I really wanted to do was be thought of as a good actor and as someone who was skilled and would move people, and the whole the fame and pop sort of side of it had gone away from me. So when the movie came out, I was very resistant to that idea. Um,
Wow.
And I think I was young enough and naive enough to, I guess I would say, put those in two different buckets, which a lot of times they don't really need to be. I learned in the course of my life that you can be, you can make art with the desire to have as many people see that art as possible and still be an artist. An artist doesn't mean that it's somebody who is struggling alone and never getting a chance to share it. So I was very resistant of the fame. And I've said before that I'll have people come up to me and they'll say, I'm the president of my school board, so in my town, I'm kind of famous. And I I always say, yeah, wow, that's true. But the truth is that that kind of like fame, you can't really know what it's like until you've experienced it, and it is life changing and it is very disconcerting at first.
Right, right. Well, speaking of when you were younger, if we can just stick there for a quick second, um, you've spoken about how you hardly took advice when you were younger,
Uh,
and you started at such a young age, and I find that quite fascinating because for me in my career, I actually struggled with the exact opposite. I felt like I have taken too much advice along the way, and at some point, I actually also stopped taking advice because, and this was a little bit later, because I was trying to figure out who I was. Cause I was like, wait, I've taken so much advice. Who am I? Like, what am I, like, what am I, what do I stand for?
mhm.
And so I was fascinated that you had not taken as much advice. And I just wanted to just dive into that, in terms of, what was that, what kind of like set you down that path to say, I'm not taking advice. And then maybe as you took advice, what was some of the best advice you were given?
Well, I think that again, as a really young child, I just had this kind of drive, and along with that drive came this idea that I knew I knew best. I knew everything there was to know. It was just hubris. It was just cockiness, and especially when it came to acting and the business. I mean, I would sometimes listen to what people were saying, but for the most part, when it came to agents or acting teachers, even
Oh, I see.
teachers of other things, or older actors who would speak to me. Very rarely did I think that they had anything to offer me because
Mhm.
I knew best, and it really was just an outsized ego, really. And but what I've learned over the years is that there were things that stuck in my head, and while I didn't get it at the time, they did start to resonate in an echo chamber over time, and I would hear those voices. I mean, I can when we were when acting school, there was different exercises that they would take you through, and I had various different teachers from different methods, and one of the methods that I was being taught was a more kind of Strasberg, um, uh, actor studio type method. And a lot of the things that they said to me about relaxation, about private moments, about personal objects, about these are all like, terms. I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, and now I use them all the time. And so, I think as life has gone on, I've learned that I have much more to learn. I feel like, the older that I've gotten and the more experience that I've had, I've said, "Listen, you need to work at things. You need to learn. You need to listen to people. There's people that have things to offer to you in your life, and you know, try to allow that in."
I love that. Especially that echo chamber comment you made. I too feel that life now, I so much appreciate it, is just continuous learning.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of people that have such great advice that they want to share.
sure.
And if you're willing to listen and take that in
Oh yeah.
and also mix it in with kind of what you stand for, You can find that right balance. Um, but speaking of balance here, there's also an art of saying no. And you seem to have found some of that too early in terms of it's about some of the roles that you've taken and some of the roles that you said no to. Um, how did you decide when to say no to things?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I've often felt personally that for many years I didn't say no enough. There because, my joke is that, if you look on my IMDb, I have, like, over 100 movies and 3 of them are good. I mean, I think
No, no.
I mean, I
No
think
way.
I think, uh, I guess over time, it's been, it's interesting. I mean, I think that at the crucial moments, a few crucial moments when it was important for me to say yes or to say no, I did. And
Hmm.
but what I've mostly tried to focus on is just longevity of the idea that, I just want to keep working. And I've learned plenty from the bad movies and from the bad experiences, and I've never, ever gone to work and, um, and said yes to a job and had it not and walked away, less knowledgeable about my craft than before, even if it's from, it's a cliche, but you learn more from the bad experiences than you do from the
Yes.
good ones. I've also but there are a few times in life where I remember as I was a really, really young man. I mean, I hadn't been in the business, for very long. I didn't have a pot to piss in, and I just gotten out of. I guess I was probably still working as a waiter or a busboy, and they were asking me to come to LA and be part of an Animal House television series. Now, Animal House um, was the first movie that I was in, but it didn't really change things for me at all. And so I was back, being a waiter. And I was also simultaneously offered a 3-line role, and it wasn't even in an off-Broadway run, it was in a workshop production. So it was gonna run for 2 weeks. So on one hand, I had Los Angeles and the possibility of more money than I'd ever in my life dreamed of, and I had,
Wow.
$120 a week for 2 weeks, basically. Um, but something about it said to me, "Listen, you're meant to be in New York. You're meant to be on the stage. You're meant to go through these steps and not, go to California at this point in your life." And looking back on that, it was a really important no. It was one of the most
Wow.
important no's that I've ever had.
That's so fascinating because so many of us in our careers, you have these opportunities that will arise, and you have to have some fortitude or someone to help guide you, or you have to guide yourself. And I just find it fascinating, and it's just amazing that you were able to say, "I'm going to turn this way," and maybe pause, and eventually, it's all played out, right? It's all worked out. But sometimes in the moment, you're always kind of have that self doubt: Is this going to work out or not?
Yeah, and I also think that we hear these kind of podcasts, like, we hear this kind of stuff coming from someone like me, and I think it can eat at us. I mean, I know it has for me. I remember, whenever I would read, and to this day, when I read actor profiles or I hear actors talking about it, and they talk about, either some one great piece of advice or one great, decision that they made, it always feels a little bit, overwhelming to me because I think to
Yeah.
myself, "Yeah, but what am I gonna do when that moment comes?" Or at least that's the way I used to feel. And I think that I try to remind myself that these are all small steps in life. Y there's of course, there's gonna be big moments and big crossroads and big decisions that you're gonna make for everything, for family, for having children or getting married or changing careers and moving to another place, of course you're going to have those big moments, but they're not every day. For the most part, I think you need to remind yourself that the steps and the goals are small. It's baby steps. To me,
That's right.
life is a series of baby steps, and you just have to keep baby stepping in the right direction.
Yeah, that's so true. I actually in the book I wrote Recharge, there was someone I interviewed and it was Macklemore, and it was really interesting. His father asked him his question, "Are you happy?" And it brought me back to a time in '99. Actually, I was doing quite well. I was in banking, but I just wasn't happy.
Hmm.
And it actually kind of forced me to move out west, and really kind of give up everything and kind of moved here to Silicon Valley
Mm.
and kind of restart my career from the bottom. And while my parents, who were very traditional, totally disapproved of the move because they were so happy being, for me being the investment banker, and then kind of going, "Wait, you're going to go join the internet? We don't even know what this is. It doesn't even work." And they were like, "Why are you going? Why are you doing that? You're supposed to be a doctor or a banker, and now you're doing some programming thing that we don't quite understand." But it was just something where I just wasn't happy in the moment. It's hard to explain at times, but when you're in it and you're just not happy, I just felt that for myself, my mental health, that happiness factor just played such a big role in some of my decision making as well.
I think your second book or your thesis could be an investigation of something that you kind of hit on. And that is, how many people struggle with or make big decisions based on how their parents are going to look at that decision. I know that
Yeah.
for myself, there were a few moments of that those were important. I had very, very supportive parents. You point out that your, traditional parents felt like that was a bad move, and
Yeah.
the strength that it takes for you to override that and say, I love you. I'm, part of this family, but I have to make my own decisions in this life and
Yeah.
down the road. I think I think you would hear a lot of people being able to isolate those moments for,
Hmm.
wherever they happened, or in some cases they don't, and
Hmm.
that's also interesting too, when people really don't move past whatever boundaries their parents have put on them. But I think that's an important part of, I don't know, growing up or, becoming your own self.
That's so true. And thank you for that idea on book two. Maybe we can do that together. I I want to shift the conversation to mental health, and men in particular. So as you know, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And, an important aspect of this is, just how men tend to struggle with the understanding and the importance of having these conversations around mental health. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's just kind of societal. I think that, we're told that that is not, not manly. It's not manly to admit to having any kind of mental health struggles. We're we're not uh we're just not steered in that direction. And even culturally, I think that you'll see certain cultures where the idea of therapy or meditation or whatever it may be, in terms of, or even thinking about your mental health at all is just disregarded or thought of as something that is, useless. I mean, I know for myself, oh wow, my father was not. I wouldn't call him a super macho guy. I mean, he was in some ways, but he wasn't a sportsman. He was an architect and an artist. But I definitely came up feeling like any kind of focus on my own mental health was not certainly not to be discussed,
Yeah.
um, and and basically not worth it. I think that my wife is sort of the opposite. She she comes from a family of therapists
Oh, wow.
um, and family therapy. It was like going to dinner, really. I mean, you know what I mean? It was like a holiday, you know. And so,
That's a new one.
so, so when I got into that family, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, everybody wants to talk about thoughts and feelings all the time, and that's her sweet spot. So, in a lot of ways, it's been that piece of it has been a journey for me because that's not the way I was raised.
Oh, it's so interesting. While my wife's family doesn't come from a family of therapists, they love to have, like, deep conversation around the dining room table. So, I have a younger brother and a younger sister. We would kinda, like, speed eat almost, we would eat quickly, right? And we were out. And I remember the first family dinner I sat with her, we were sitting around the table, and I was eating quickly because that was, like, my normal pace,
Right.
and they were, like, not even started, and they were just talking, and I was kinda looking like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And they just wanted to spend time and hang out, and there was I love that about that family and just seeing how different the dynamics were than my own,
Sure.
growing up. But yeah, they had a lot of conversation. I can only imagine what it's like to have a family of therapists, but that was a different time where they just sat down, they had a lot of conversation.
Yeah, and I also think that, you know, I mean, I think it can cut both ways because I do believe that, and especially as men, I've been working recently actually um, on a not acting yet because we haven't set it up, but been working with these writers developing this television show about male friendship
Oh,
and
wow.
about this very thing that we are discussing. And you know, I believe that sometimes, especially with male friendships and closeness and what we would consider to be deep can actually exist on another plane that's almost unspoken. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
like I can call my best friend and we don't really need to get, I mean, we can get deep, if we want to, but we can talk about sports and weather and it's okay. Neither of us walk away from the conversation feeling like um I did that wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? That was a waste of my time.
Right.
Whereas on my wife's side of things, I think sometimes people do feel that way. They feel like, why would I spend, 20 minutes or an hour or whatever talking to somebody unless it got like super deep. So
Yeah.
me folding into that world and has been a little bit of a give and take. And I also think that in some ways she's also uh, come around to the other side too and feels a little bit more comfortable, in some situations just saying, "Oh, I'm so glad we're gonna be with your family, because we don't have to get heavy." You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be, it's gonna be just fun, you know?
Uh, I can't wait to see, your whatever you put together on male friendships. Literally, this just happened to me this weekend. I was with some friends who I hadn't seen in a while, and we went out and we just were kind of playing a little golf together. And I got home after spending a number of hours with them, and my wife was like, "So what's going on? What did you learn about, what's happening with them?" And I was like, I don't know, actually. She's like, "What do you mean? You spent 5 hours with them. What'd you talk about?" I was like, "I don't think we really
Exactly.
talked that much." I mean,
Right.
I was like, "I actually don't think we talked about anything." And she was like, "How could you spend 5 hours? I mean, what's going on with their kids?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she,
Uh,
like, looked at me like, "You caveman." I was like, "I don't know. I have no idea what's going on." Because it was just the art of just hanging out, and
sure.
you're just kind of like just enjoying each other's company, not going very deep, but it was something that was very perplexing to her in the moment.
I I can totally get it. I totally get it. That's really funny.
I just kind of going on this, kind of masculine kind of because we are feeling right now in this day and age, we feel like we're in this hyper masculine time. And you seem to have found and struck the right balance between being strong and also being sensitive. And then whether that's, in the characters or whether that's in social media, how do you find, do you see yourself being able to find, like, hit that right tone, and how do you do that? Because you make it look, I'll just tell you, you make it look effortless. And so if there was one word that would describe that, I looked at your social, I'm like, this is effortless for him. He can be strong, but he can also be sensitive. And for so many people like myself or others in business, it's always hard to find that right balance, but you seem to have struck it. And I was just wondering how you've done it.
Well, thank you. Um, I guess I would say that I I don't. I mean, maybe at some point I did. Certainly, maybe when I was younger, but I don't really. In my mind, I don't see the difference, or I don't see a separation between being masculine and being sensitive or
Mm,
compassionate or understanding of people who are different than you or caring about women's rights
mm,
or caring about social justice or caring about the environment or animals or planets or clean water or I like we're at this point in society where suddenly these things have somehow become, I don't know, like unmasculine.
mm,
And to me, what they are is insecurities,
mm,
which I think it's really easy to fall into a kind of forced when you try to force your masculinity on people in some kind of a macho way. I think it's really just a mask for insecurity. And I am not insecure about my manhood. I don't think I have been really. I don't. I mean, maybe when I was, like I said, when I was a teenager, I had certain I had a certain kind of mask, I guess, or a, that's just part of being a boy. You feel like you have to
sure.
kind of stay strong, stay tough, and put on that mask. But I would also say that one of the uh, one of the great benefits of being an actor is that you are called upon to explore that side of you. You know, even if you're playing.
Right.
Even if you're playing a tough guy, you're
Mm,
probably going to have some scene where, I mean, the cliche would be, you do a flashback to the tough guy and his wife died, when 10 years ago, and he's boo hoo hoo, but now I'm going to go kill the bad guys, but you're still called upon to play the scene where the wife dies. I saw a movie recently called Sing Sing, which was a fantastic movie that I would really recommend.
Mm,
And it takes place in Sing Sing in Ossining, New York, in the prison. And there's scenes where the prisoners, who are all just, they're hardened people, tough, living in prison and coming from the streets and being exposed to extreme amounts of violence, and they get into these acting classes because it's an acting program within the prison, and they get to just let down those guards and just go blah 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 and
yeah.
walk around and become and do silly accents and put on
Mm,
questions and dress up as women and do all this kind of crazy stuff, and it's incredibly freeing for them. And I found that so moving in the movie. I mean, it's a beautifully acted and directed movie. Many of the inmates who are in it were actually, had been in prison actually, but some of the actors that they hired actually were real ex cons.
wow.
And so I think that, you know, I've gotten a chance to explore all that. I've had to because that's what my job is, Um, and so I feel really grateful for that, because I don't want to live my life and feel like every time, I walk into a bar, I got to get into a fist fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. I would rather try to understand other people's points of view. That, and I had 4 sisters, so that helped.
Four sisters can definitely help in that process. I'd love to switch the conversation now to something that's, very dear to you around 6degrees.org. And maybe before we dive into the conversation, I could just read something that was sent, uh, because it was a note that was sent, and I'm gonna go through it quickly here. But it says, and I just felt this was so powerful that I just wanted to share this. Um, we're the union representing the 2,000 active fire officers of FDNY, so Fire Department of New York. I attended the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters convention in Boston, and wanted to thank you, Kevin Bacon, and all of your 6degrees.org family for the gift of a 1-year subscription to Calm. My work in our union focuses on the health and safety of our FDNY members. I believe dealing with mental health stressors has always lagged in our FDNY community, many believing stress and anxiety are just part of the baggage we are expected to carry. Thank you in advance for all your efforts to help those in need. You are making a difference. Um, I wanted to share that just because we here at Com2 get a lot of emails and notes and reviews, and I tend to spend a lot of time just going through them because it's a great reminder of the impact uh, that we're making as a company. And when I read that, and it was so heartfelt, it was so honest, you could almost immediately feel the impact that you have made with your organization, 6degrees.org. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about it. Like, why did you start it? What do you hope what impact you're hoping it to make, and what it's been like?
Well, first off, what you what you didn't mention was that we were able to provide those because you donated them. So let's not forget that. I mean, that was huge. That was huge for us to we had been working on this um, um, these kits for the 40th anniversary of Footloose. Uh, we're heading towards our goal of 40,000 uh, kits to give to people in need. And Calm, this is nothing that never would have occurred to us. Donated all those kits for those firemen, firefighters, fire people. And you know, when you see that kind of impact, it's really and that kind of a letter, it really is so encouraging. We're an organization. Yes, of course, we're always in the looking to raise money, because money is the thing that keeps the engine running, and money is the thing that sometimes provides the actual services or outreach or whatever, the support for the kind of work that we're doing. But we're also in the business of trying to have unmonetized impact. And that is a perfect example, and a perfect example of us partnering with someone like you and being able to deliver this to those people. I find that very moving, and as we know about all kinds of PTSD, certainly from uh, the uh, the people who have been in the military and been in wars. It is something that people are either ashamed of or don't want to address. And a lot of times, as you mentioned before, this is men, but not always. And I guess probably up until this point, I hadn't really naively put firefighters into that category.
Hmm.
But of course, now I 100% do, and I look at the recent fires in LA.
Yeah.
We have a place out in LA, and our kids live in LA, so of course we were there, and we were then when we left town, we were watching it really closely, and I just thought about the hours and hours and hours and hours that these men and women worked, and the danger that they were just constantly facing. And as we know, it's only going to get worse in terms of the impact of climate change and the amount of time that people are going to be spending. So something like calm, like some kind of self-care is super important. I think it's going to get increasingly more important as time goes on.
Yeah, and can you go into a little bit about why you started it and how you started it? Because obviously, your organization has impacted so many people, and we just love to know the origins of how it all got started, and maybe you could just start there a little bit as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I moved to New York to become an actor, I was 17. I didn't really think about the world. I didn't read the newspaper
Hmm.
unless I was looking, for an apartment or checking whatever basketball scores. I was so focused on me. That was the beginning and end of what I was interested in exploring. I just wanted to, make it, whatever that meant.
Hmm.
And, um, and eventually after I had kids and after I started to have, some success and got married, I started to step a little bit outside of just myself. You do when you have children, right? Because now
Right.
that's the cliche that you have someone that you will throw yourself in front of a bus for, so you're stepping outside of your own, self obsession, and I started to think about the world, and I was sort of involved with some organizations and would uh, eh, kind of dabble. And my wife was very much in the world of the environment and very early on a believer in global warming and the threat that was going to pose.
Yeah.
And I but I wasn't really focused, and I felt like I needed to take some of that energy that I had towards the things that I was feeling overwhelmed with, when I would pick up the paper, war and hunger and social justice and environment and children and just on and on and on, and just focus it for myself. And I thought about Paul Newman because
Hmm.
uh, Kira had worked with Paul, and we knew Paul and Joanne, and yet he took his face and put it on jars of tomato sauce, and then, you know, all the profits from that went to various charities
Yeah.
that he believed in, and I thought that was so interesting because it was so specifically branded to him. So I started to think, if I was to do something like that, what would the brand be? And of course, I thought about this dumb game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, which had started a few years earlier and just wouldn't go away as much as I wanted it to. You know, it just wouldn't go away. And so I said, how about 6degrees.com? And I had a friend who understood the internet because I really didn't. And he said, "Well, you gotta get a domain." I said, "What's a domain?" And he went on for me and said, "That one's not available." So he went to 6degrees.org, and that was available. And I said, "Well, how do I get it?" And he said, "Well, I'm gonna call them up and find out how much they want for it." And, so I basically, without knowing what it was going to be, uh, bought that domain,
Ah,
for,
that's
a
awesome.
couple $1,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And, and then I started talking to people in the philanthropic world, and, eventually we put 6degrees.org together, and it's always kind of morphing. I mean, there's always new, fresh ideas and things that we are working on that, we have an amazing team of just really, brilliant, staff who are really tireless and always coming up with great, cool ideas. And our focus is to look for a lot of times, grassroots organizations who are doing good work
Mm,
out in the field, not the big, sweeping, uh, American Cancer Society or whatever it is,
sure,
they're
sure.
they got plenty of people that are, standing up for the good work that they do, the Red Cross or whatever it is. We're more interested in community-based groups, sometimes, you know, pretty big and sometimes really small who are doing interesting work, and we try to give them a platform. We try to give them a voice, uh, and it's been really satisfying. I was in at South by Southwest Film Festival last weekend and was launching this television show that I have. And just as an example, I went in and when I landed, I went and we did three podcasts with three different women who had these just really interesting, organizations. One was empowering immigrant women, and another was giving opportunities to kids for after school programs. Another had to do with sports and soccer and coaching and mentoring. And they were all, individual kind of groups, but they were all doing really interesting work. And so that's kind of what we do.
Oh, I love that, and it feels good. As part of Recharge, the book, all of proceeds go to NAMI, which is very similar to what you're saying. It's because it's community based mental health, and just to hear you talk about the community aspect of it is just so important in mental health and that journey for so many, especially amongst the youth. And just speaking of youth, 6degrees.org has a lot of focus on the youth as well.
Sure.
And just kind of wondering what you're seeing as you go out there to different communities and speak to many of the youth that are out there. What are you seeing with them today?
I think it's a rough time. I mean, I think that um, when you think about COVID, for instance, I mean, what a as a young person, what a terrible thing to go through. I remember I was in New York, and my kids were full on New Yorkers when they were. I think they were during 9/11. They were maybe 8 and 10 or 10 and 12 or
Uh,
something like that. And I saw how hard that was for them, and the toll that it took on them. But it happened, and yes, we never forget, but it didn't last. It wasn't like a 9/11 right, every day for years. And I think about
mm,
COVID and about how disruptive that must have been.
Yeah.
I know how as a grown person, and for for a child, I just think I think it was really tough going to school in this day and age and having to do active shooting drills. Um, I,
Yeah.
I mean, who talk about something having an impact on your mental health? Uh,
Yeah.
and the kind of the divisiveness now that is happening within our political situation, and the vitriol and the hate that you hear, you know, just pushed towards certain groups of people is, I mean, it does feel like a very tough time for a child's mental health and loneliness, and you add to that screens. Listen, I think that there's a lot of, I'm not someone that says, oh, tech ruined everything. I don't believe it. That I use my screen. It's made my life, in a lot of ways easier. 6degrees.org was launched as, social media with a social conscious. Like that was, our sort of, fundamental concept. And something like calm obviously is something that's, exceedingly helpful to people that they're able to do because of having this thing in their pocket. But I also think that it can really, for kids, can create a kind of isolation, and it's sad to me to I'm the genie's out of the bottle. I don't really know how what the answer is, but it's sad to
Yeah.
me to look at a table of teenagers if I'm walking past a coffee shop and they're in a circle and they're all like this.
Yeah.
It's just a bummer. I mean, I think that I think it's a tough time for kids, and I will say that when we talk about mental health and focus on it, you mentioned the idea uh, of more focus on men, or at least acknowledging that there that there's a possibility of having that a man could have some mental health issues. But I also have heard, and in our 6 Degrees podcast, multiple people and multiple organizations that are specifically dealing with the mental health of children.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a positive thing. I mean, on one hand, it's a drag because you go, God, do we really need that? Is that something we really need? But on the other hand, I think that it's good that people are starting to kind of wake up and see that as an issue.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And, I have 2 daughters, and I speak to them all the time about these moments where, I recognize screens are a big part of their life. It's just with most kids, it's there. We have to figure out, almost like we got to work with it. Uh, but there are these moments, I'll tell you, and this was not last weekend; it was a couple weeks back. But we all watched the family movie together, and I got to tell you, it was just one of those things where I forgot how enjoyable it was, where everyone put down their phones, and for whatever, I think it was raining, and we were all, and no one was going anywhere because usually everyone's doing something and you're overscheduled, and you just had a moment to go watch like a movie together, and it was just really cool. It was just really cool to sit down and do that, and we did it at home, and I was like, "Oh, this was awesome." And then my kids went back to their screens afterwards. But
Well, at
for
least
that,
you gave them at least it was, it was an hour and 45 minutes of, one screen. You know what I
that's
mean?
why.
That's a good thing. And honestly, even from forgetting the mental health or the tech, the screen aspect of it, as a filmmaker, it's very disturbing that people are watching things while doing this. You sit there and you go, put you missed my best moment, or I put, it's just it's not the way that films are made to be consumed. That's why I love, personally, I am a big supporter of going to the cinema, and I go probably once a week, and
Oh,
the
love
average
that.
American goes twice a year, unfortunately,
Yeah.
in this day and age.
Yeah.
But anyway, uh,
That's crazy. We gotta get more people to the movie theater.
I agree.
That's
I
another
agree.
key takeaway.
Yeah,
I just wanna keep just pulling on the conversation thread of 6degrees.org and something that you've launched for this month around, the I Get It campaign that you're doing. Can you just talk a little bit about that campaign
sure.
and the importance of it and what you're trying to do there?
Yeah, yeah. It's around Mental Health Month, and it's a pretty simple idea, in that people will post um, some kind of a assessment of what they do to find uh, relief or release from a stressful situation. And
Mm.
I think that and with the hashtag, I get it. I mean, I get it. It just in and of itself is an interesting concept. And
Oh, I loved it.
yeah,
Loved it when you saw it.
yeah, I'll tell you I was thinking about it. We were talking earlier about my wife. Um, my instinct as a man is to just fix. I'm a fixer, right? I mean, if I see something that's broken, I want to fix it. In fact, we have a joke, which is, I'll say, I've been at this for a long time, but I think we have to call the guy. Calling the guy means that there's somebody who is more skilled at fixing something than I am. Or she'll say to me, honey, I think you got to call the guy. But but that's always my last, that's always the last ditch effort. I try my best to fix it. And that includes, um, uh, emotional or problems or sadness or personal struggles. So in other words, if she, in the course of our relationship would be sad about something or come to I go right to fixing it. But
Huh.
but it's not always really that effective. I don't know how to do it all the time, and it's not really necessarily what she wants to hear.
Hmm.
What she wants to hear is not here. What she wants is to be heard.
Yes.
And so when we first got together, um, I would talk to her about, things that were going on that were bumming me out, right? She'd see me and could tell from my mood that either I was upset or stressed or tired or angry, about something. And as I said before, being someone who is comes from this, family of sharing and thoughts and feelings, she would say, hey, what's going on? And I would talk about it, expecting that she was going to try to fix it, that she was going to
Ah.
say, well, this is what you need to do,
Hmm.
right? But she didn't, because she's smart
Hmm.
like this. What she what she would say is, "I get it." And that was
Yeah.
it. And to this day, that's pretty much it. Unless I say specifically, I frame something by saying, "I need your help with something. Do you think this or do you think this? Do you think I should do this? Do you think I should do this? I mean, do you have any ideas?" But unless I'm asking specifically for that, her go-to response is, "I get it."
Ah,
A
love that.
and so I've tried to myself learn, uh, to, you know, uh, to err on that side a little bit more and not to try to jump in and, mansplain her into a better better mental health situation. You know what I mean? Just being there and saying, "I get it," and hearing it. So I think that in that way, it's, it's a positive, and interesting hashtag that we're going to embrace.
Oh, it's such a great hashtag, and there's just so much to unpack even of what you just said. I mean, I too want to fix things, and not always well. A couple weeks back, our water heater went down, and my wife's like, we got to call the plumber. We got no hot water," and I was like, "I'm gonna fix it," and she just was like, "No." And I was like, "No, I'm gonna go fix it." So I went back there and obviously like there's just a lot back there. And so I just started pushing and turning knobs and it didn't fix it. I'll tell you. And thank God we called the plumber because he was like, "You never want to touch that knob. Who touched that knob?" And my wife's like, "He did. He touched that knob." And so uh but I love that tag around, I get it. It's just it's so simple and it's so direct and it's to the point. How can we all get involved with this? Is there something we can all do here in terms of all getting involved and getting behind this?
Well, certainly, I mean, I will be my example would be posting some kind of a video or a statement just to show what it is when you are overwhelmed or stressed about something that you do, whether it's some kind of meditation or listen to calm or make yourself dinner, do a jigsaw puzzle. For me, it's like I really I love to be around, our animals, our horses, the breathing. It's this thing,
Oh,
it's
so
playing the
good.
guitar, it's just, I even have I've got a sort of snap/meditation that I do every day. It's not my regular meditation, but it's like a different one where I sort of go into it. It's only 10 minutes. My
Hmm.
feet are raised, my hands are crossed. Um, I I mean, whatever it is, if you just, post that with the hashtag, then I think that more people will understand that we all not only, well, we will get it, but not only that, all of us are at some point experience a certain amount of struggle and maybe get some ideas from each other about different ways that you can find relief and ease and peace in your life. And the other thing is that on 6degrees.org, there's going to be uh, all kinds of suggestions and places where people can go to deal with mental health issues and just in general to not be afraid to share that this is a real thing and that a lot of us struggle with it, and that's okay. Once you, what's scary is not acknowledging it, not, not.
That's right.
Yeah, the thing once, if you're acknowledging it, you're one step towards finding peace.
Thank you for that. I know we'll definitely be posting. I'll be posting and all supporting that with the hashtag I get it. I love that. I know we only have a few minutes left and I want to be respectful of time. I always thought I'd end with some type of speed round, but I recognize that there's nothing speedy about what I'm about to ask you next. So
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions and then
Okay.
we'll go from there. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but what's, something that might surprise people about you?
I like Angry Birds.
Oh,
I was actually on
I
the
love
plane
that.
yesterday, but I like the really old school one. I don't like the new one. I was on a plane the other day and it was uh it was it was a packed plane and there was this guy sitting next to me and he clearly recognized me and I was thinking, he's looking over my shoulder going, I can't believe this dude is doing the plane. With all the things I should be reading and looking at the news and listening to it, a smart analysis of the world situation. Here I am, making those birds fly around.
I love it. I love it. Many years ago when I was in gaming, I actually went over there and visited the founder in Finland and I was like, "Why isn't it called Happy Birds?" And he's like, "'Cause I'm angry." And I was like, "Okay, I get it. I get it. I totally get it."
I
and
did I
so
didn't I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know it was from Finland. That's
yeah,
interesting. I'll have to look that up.
yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. It's father and two sons.
Wow.
Um, what's something that you're actively working on for your own well-being? Is there something that you're actively working on for yourself right now?
Um, well, okay, so I'm it's interesting because, as I've gotten older, staying in shape has
Mm,
gotten harder and harder. And what I find is that because I have to work harder at it, I also have a lot more um, just soreness, just physical soreness. So it's like kind of this balance between I'm you know just working out harder and then the recovery is worse. So I've always been someone who was first off, we were talking, 45 minutes ago about things that I didn't understand when I was younger that have
yeah,
now made sense, as I've gotten older. And one of those is breath. And
sure.
when I was a kid in acting school, one of the first things they start talking about is, take a deep breath. I'm like, oh my God, why? Can't I just breathe? I mean, I'm just breathe. Why do we have to always be thinking of, right? So stretching and breathing are both things that I've always never had the time for it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's just been a waste of my time. Like I'd rather be, just out doing like hitting the bag or, whatever it is,
that's
like
right.
working harder, 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 and not taking the time to stretch and breathe. But I found that both of those things have gotten more and more important in my life, both as just physically, mostly just physically feeling better, but also mental. Um, and so, a lot of the things that I do, meditation wise or exercise wise, I really do concentrate a lot more on breathing, a lot more on stretching. In fact, recently started both Kira and I have started doing something we never did, and that is um, stretching, like maybe a good, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes right before bed. And that's been really helpful. It's actually made us sleep better. So that's been
I love that. I love that. And last question here. I wrote this book on recharge and really thinking about your mental health as like a phone battery.
Mhm.
And so, one of the ways I recharge is by having conversation. What's one of the ways you recharge in life?
Taking a walk, especially if I can take a walk in nature. And if I can't take a walk in nature, then I'll just take a walk. Um,
I-
I think that, we spend a lot of time on our phones. I spend a lot of time with our heads like this. We spend a lot
Yeah.
of time in cars, in New York, in the subway. Like I take the subway almost every day when I'm at home in New York. But sometimes I'll say, I got time, I'm
Yeah.
going to do the 10 blocks, the 20 blocks and try to not have the phone as part of it. Or I'm just going to walk in the park or walk, on the farm or wherever it is. I really love it.
I love that. I love that. And I thought you were gonna say music maybe, because I've watched your music with your brother, and I find that just for myself, just very calming as well, the power of music. But walks are amazing, obviously, as well. I'm sure it's all of the above. I wanted to thank you, Kevin, for just, having this discussion and conversation with me on recharge. I feel my personal battery now is at 100%.
Good. I feel good too. I feel good
It's
too.
just, I feel great. I want you to know before I let you go that I'm thrilled to share that Calm is going to be making a donation to 6degrees.org and also sponsoring hashtag IGETIT.
That's awesome. Oh my God, we're thrilled. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that, and I appreciate your support in the past and ongoing. And I'm really thrilled, and I love what you're doing there. So
Yeah, we need you back for another sleep story. So we need you. We need you to come back.
I'm here. I'm here.
Awesome.
Here's the
Awesome.
here's the microphone.
Thank you again, Kevin.
All right. Peace. Thank you.